Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Hope all of you are fine and enjoying good health at home. Welcome back in your online classes. Today we are going to start a new chapter from our book Understanding History 2. Our today's lecture is about the legacy of the Mughals. Today we will study about the contribution of the Mughal rulers in subcontinent. In this chapter, we will go through from those things that Mughal contributed for the society and left behind them as their legacy. Legacy means anything handed down from the past. For example, after the death of a king, his throne was transferred to his son. In this way, all the things that Mughal did in their time, all those things were transferred to later governments. Today we will study about the legacy of the Mughal kings. They ruled India for more than 300 years and brought a lot of developments in subcontinent. Their empire came to an end in 1857, but they left their legacy in this region. For example, they constructed many splendid buildings in subcontinent, and after the partition of India in 1947, Pakistani and Indian governments got the possession of the Mughal buildings. Now we can visit those Mughal buildings which are now in Pakistan. And Pakistani government and we received all those buildings as legacy of the Mughals. There are many other things that Mughal rulers left in subcontinent, and today we will discuss about all those things one by one. The Mughal Empire functioned effectively in the main areas of government, administration, military, and justice. This brought about stability which allowed economic and social development. Government at the time of the Mughals. Students, Mughal rulers took the policies of Delhi Sultanate to organize their administrative systems. Delhi Sultans settled administrative system and later same system was adopted by Sher Shah Suri with some better improvements. The Mughals further refined it. There were separate departments for finance, agriculture, trade, education, justice, etc. that were served and supervised by talented and competent people like Raja Todarmal, Itimaduddaulah, Afzal Khan, and Raghunath Rai, to name a few, as well as governors of provinces, military commanders, and religious scholars who advised the kings. The army was well equipped and well organized. The Mir Bakshi was a very important position as he was in charge of the army's position, posting, salaries, and supplies, and getting news reports from all over the empire. Students, like Mir Bakshi, we can see in present-day Pakistan there is also a head of army like chief of army staff, and we can also see that in Pakistani government there are different departments like finance, agriculture, trade, education, etc. We received these ideas of government from the previous rulers like Mughal rulers who introduced excellent system at their time. The Mughals introduced the use of guns and cannons and also introduced weapons of excellent quality. Students, the Mughals did not have any navy, although boats, sea-going ships were built and used to transport cargo and people and for pilgrims going to Arabia for Hajj. Law and order. The maintenance of law and order in the empire was given importance as it meant stability of the government and security for the people and their work and trade. Laws of Akbar's government were people friendly and fair to Muslims and Hindus alike. Jahangir's sense of justice for all is evident from the chain of justice he put up in Agra. Mughal rulers tried to provide justice to their people without any discrimination of religion. Mughal rulers also appointed qazis and muftis in their empire. Qazis and muftis were known for their understanding and study of law and its fair application. The government also provided funds, madad-e-maash, for deserving people of four types like scholars, saints, mystics, illiterate, weak, and poor people, and uneducated people of noble birth who could not earn their living. Students, now we can see that Pakistan is a welfare state and try to provide funds to poor people of Pakistan. And you can also see that we have judges like Supreme Court and High Court judges to provide justice to the people. Mughal rulers tried to provide funds to the poor people of their empire. These welfare measures were continued by Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. The Mughal emperors from Akbar to Aurangzeb spent 5 to 6 hours daily in meeting people and dealing with state business in the Diwan-e-Aam. In Diwan-e-Aam, common people as well as ambassadors, governors, victorious military commanders and also prisoners were presented. Students, at the time of the Mughal rulers, India came to be known for its fabulous riches and wealth which attracted people from far off lands. Like the Portuguese came in the 15th century and were followed in the 17th century by the Dutch, the English and the French who wished to benefit from trade with India and made enormous profits in the process. Society and culture of India at the time of the Mughal kings. The Mughal way of life became a part of the society and culture of both Hindus and Muslims. It extended to all the peoples and gave them dignity, peace, and prosperity. At the same time, a flowering of the arts and architecture took place which has left its mark forever in the subcontinent. By the mid-19th century, Muslim poetry, prose, humor, and irony had all reached peak of sophistication. Delhi and Lucknow, these were the cities, the main centers of excellence for Muslim culture. The Mughals took a lot from the Persian court and culture. Persian became the official language of the Mughal kings. The court mannerism, dress, and etiquette reflected Persian civilization, especially during the time of Noor Jahan. Students, Noor Jahan was a Persian by birth. Originally, she was a Persian, and later, when she got married with Jahangir, she became queen, one of the powerful queen of Mughal Empire, and she was the personality who introduced Persian culture and style, fashion in Mughal Empire. Literature. Literature and music were other great contributions by the Mughals to the Muslim civilization of the subcontinent. Poets and historians has left behind outstanding literary works of prose, poetry, history, and religious study. The Mughal emperors themselves, particularly Babur and Jahangir, have left behind their autobiography. Mughal rulers ordered scholars of their time to write excellent books. In this way, they supported literature. Mughal rule produced exceptional poets like Asadullah Khan Ghalib, Mir Taqi Mir, and Soda, who reflected the sadness and the inevitable decline of the Mughals. Status of women. Women in the Mughal era were by no means backward. Students, Mughal rulers encouraged the education of women as well. The ladies of the Mughal court and palaces were not only educated but also well versed in social etiquette, the arts, politics, and even horse riding. Even Queen Noor Jahan won a costly diamond bracelet from the king as a reward for her marksmanship. Shah Jahan's daughter Jahanara was an intelligent and talented person. On the other hand, Aurangzeb's own daughter Zebunisa was a poet of merit even though her father did not encourage poetry at his court. Education in Mughal times. The Mughal emperors encouraged education. The Ain-e-Akbari quotes that there were 52 universities in and around Thatta in Sindh during Jahangir's time. As one historian, Rawlinson, comments the high degree of culture in Mughal India was largely the result of excellent system of education. Students at that time, the journal syllabus means curriculum was Dars-e-Nizami. It became general course while for religious teachings, students prefer Madrasa Rahimia. Although both men and women received education in Mughal times, women did not go out of their homes. Instead, tutors were appointed by the nobility for their children. Akbar was himself unlettered, meaning he was uneducated. But he gave much thought to education, syllabuses, and their content, and the teaching methodology for his subjects. The Mughal emperors encouraged education by setting up schools and seminars, grants to scholars, poets, writers, and teachers kept the standard of education high. Books were rare and costly as they had to be transcribed by hand. Yes, students, books were rare and it was difficult to get a book on a low rate, but a personal library was considered essential for a scholar. Nearly every nobleman in Mughal times had a sizable library of his own. Perhaps there are few communities in the world among whom education is more generally diffused than among Mohammedans in India. Means the Muslim Mohammedans means the Muslims of India. He who holds an office worth 20 rupees a month commonly gives his sons an education equal to that of a prime minister. They learn through the medium of Arabic and Persian. Literary works such as Gulistan, Bostan, Akhlaq-e Jalali, Akhlaq-e Nasiri, and Anwar-e Suhaili were widely read at the time of the Mughals. But in 1835, when English replaced Persian as the official language of the British Empire in India, Muslim education received a setback from which it would never recover because Persian and Arabic no longer had the economic power to benefit the people of the subcontinent. Religious tolerance. Students, Mughal were professional kings. The Mughals came from Central Asia and were Muslims by birth, having converted centuries ago, but they treated kingship as their profession. It was clear that they did not come to convert or oppress the people of India because of their religious belief. In Islam, you cannot force any non-Muslim to accept Islam. Hence, they practiced a form of religion which was personal and tolerant towards the people they ruled. Babur and Humayun had little time to administer the state, but Akbar ruled for nearly 50 years. Emperor Akbar was influenced by liberal ideas of the Persians and Sufis, and Abul Fazl Faizi and their father Sheikh Mubarak were his mentors. His discussions in the Ibadat Khana at Fatehpur Sikri with Jains, Hindus, Christians, Jesuits, and Muslim ulama led him to evolve a new religious order called Deen-e-Ilahi. Students, Akbar made a new religion to bring harmony among different communities of subcontinent. However, both Hindus and Muslims rejected it, and even at court, Raja Birbal was the only one to become part of this new religion. Akbar did not impose it on anyone and the cult died out with Akbar. Akbar also stopped the custom of sati among Hindu women. When Akbar was busy in mixing Islam with other religions, there was only one personality known as Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi, also known as Mujaddid al-Fasani, who opposed Akbar. Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi was against the religious policies of Akbar. He stressed that Islam's beliefs were unique and no one can change belief of Islam. Later, Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi was jailed by Jahangir for his refusal to bow before the king, but later released by him and kept at court. Later, when Aurangzeb came to throne as sixth great Mughal ruler, he was influenced by Sarhindi, and he followed the simple and austere form of Islam by leading a pious and morally correct life as emperor. Students, when Akbar was the ruler, Akbar started to celebrate non-Islamic festivals at court, and in this way he was able to make non-Muslims in his favor. But later, when Aurangzeb came to throne, he stopped all the non-Islamic festivals and banned music, dance and alcohol at court. It was the difference between Akbar and Aurangzeb. Mughal art and architecture. Mughal did a lot in the field of art and architecture. They came from Persia. They established their empire in India. They were influenced by Persian. But their style was the mixture of Central Asian, Persian, and Indian influences evolving into the Mughal school of painting, whose unique expression was in the form of miniature paintings. These Mughal influences are still alive in Pakistan, where miniature painting thrives as an art form among local artists. Under Akbar, more than 100 artists worked in a large state building at Fatehpur Sikri and were also given mansabs or ahadis, means a unit. Calligraphy as an art form is a legacy of the Mughal era. Khwaja Abdus Samad was given the title of Shiri Kalam because of his skill in calligraphy. On the other hand, Jahangir was an art critic and could recognize the work of any artist by just one look at their work. Some of Jahangir's albums of paintings are found in the State Library of Berlin, Germany, and another taken away by Nadir Shah is now in the Imperial Library at Tehran, Iran. Book illustrations were also constantly made by artists during Mughal era. Shah Jahan's aesthetic ability was well known and architects as well as painters were patronized by him. The splendor and magnificence of the Mughal Empire can be seen in the buildings left behind by its rulers. The mausoleums, mosques, gardens, and forts testify to the artistic beauty and grace cultivated by the Mughal royalty. Babur's love for gardens was well known. However, the history of the Mughal architecture begins with Akbar, who completed Humayun's mausoleum and built the Agra fort, the palace city of Fatehpur Sikri with its Panch Mahalla and Buland Darwaza, and also the fortresses at Lahore, Ajmer, Allahabad and Attock. The construction at Fatehpur Sikri and Agra uses red sandstone, and the carvings and decorations are a blend of Muslim and Hindu styles. Shah Jahan also laid the foundation of a new city, Shah Jahanabad, and built the imposing Lal Killa, the Red Fort, in Delhi. He preferred the use of white marble, and the Taj Mahal is regarded as one of the wonders of the world in architecture. Students, Mughal mainly used red sandstone and white marble in their buildings. Other buildings of Shah Jahan's time are Moti Masjid at Agra, Jamia Masjid at Delhi, a beautiful mosque at Thatta in Sindh, and a palace, mosque, and fort at Kabul. At the end of this chapter, we can say that the Mughal era is remarkable for the diversity of excellence achieved in various fields, be it administration of a vast empire, religious tolerance, cultural and literary fields, or architectural magnificence. Okay, students, it was the end of our today's lesson. Now you have to complete your today's work timely. Take care. Allah Hafiz.